Good morning and welcome to my hobby bench once again. And it's been a long time since I have made a how-to video, and I know I've never actually made a how-to video on how I set up a fuel tank or how a fuel tank is set up. And since I've got so many new viewers and subscribers and possibly new people to the channel, I figured why not just shoot a video of me setting up this fuel tank for the upcoming runs of this beautiful OS FS120 Surpass SP engine. And what better time to show this piece of eye candy than on putting a tank together for it. So this engine is going to require a special tank setup, one which I typically don't do, which is a 3-line setup. And these are the items I've got to use. I'm going to be using a brand new section of fuel tubing, brand new tank, fuel filter, and I got some fresh razor blades. So in my estimation, in my mind, there are only 2 brands of fuel tanks to ever use, at least in North America, and it's the only ones I've ever really used, and that's Dubro or Sullivan. Any other tank, in my opinion, is probably inferior because I would have heard about them or used them if they weren't. So what I've got here is a brand new Sullivan fuel tank, or Dubro fuel tank. And this is a 16-ounce tank. It's typically much larger than I would use for anything, but it was a freebie that came with an engine purchase. So I'm never going to complain about having a free fuel tank, because there's one thing I can always use more of is fuel tanks and fuel line, and that's just the way it is. So you'll get these nice tanks here, and I like Dubro fuel tanks the way they're shaped, because they're shaped like this so that you can push this thing right up to the firewall and it doesn't pinch your lines, because other tanks, and you'll see Sullivan has slant tanks to do the same thing, because any tank that you've got that this is the leading edge is prone to either you're going to have to drill a hole in your firewall to have those things stick out, or it's going to get crimped. So that's never what you want to see happen here, is this back plastic piece came off in the tank. Now, they always put the items for the tank in here, and that little black plastic piece, when it falls off, is really one of the most challenging things to get out. That's why I'm going to grab it here with my pliers and grab that out, because I like to just kind of shake this stuff out. It comes with pieces of brass tubing, the Clunk, and a piece of fuel tubing. And there's your tank. So the other thing that's nice about Dubro tanks is this plug is at the top, so that when you have to set your vent line, it's really, you don't have to sit there and curve it. It's pretty much right there at the top of the tank anyway, so that's a plus. So let me go ahead and let's see here. So fresh razor blade, always the most important thing for doing this task. So let's see here. The first thing I'm going to do is assemble my Clunk. Now, the instruction manual for the OS SP engine recommends Clunks normally always have just one slit cut in them. They recommend cutting a cross slit, and the only reason they recommend doing that is because they're thinking it's going to be used in flight, which obviously this isn't going to be used in flight, and they want you to make sure that they have consistent fuel draw throughout the course of the flight. So what I'm going to do here is I just kind of, maybe I can zoom in a bit more here. I just kind of stack these things together and just kind of eyeball. This is what I do. I just kind of eyeball about how deep this thing is going to be, and then that kind of tells me how long my fuel line needs to be. As you can see, I'll have a piece of brass tubing coming out and dropping down a bit. So this just kind of is my gauge as to how long of tubing to cut, because you always need to cut this piece of tubing. So I'm going to cut this piece of tubing right about here. I always keep that stuff. So I'm looking here, and since I've never done a three-holer, the plug on the back side has 3 holes, and on the front you can see they haven't punched that out, because typically people only use 2-hole systems. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stick this piece of brass tubing in that 3rd hole and just kind of make an indentation of where that needs to be, and then just kind of lightly cut that off. Just cut a little ring around there. So now I've got that in there. So the other thing I need to do is I need to cut these pieces of tubing. So at least I've got that part done. And that's where a brand new razor blade comes into play. Brand new. So you're always wondering, how the heck do you cut tubing? And this is something I learned probably from Model Airplane News years and years ago. My mat has kind of got some bubbles in it because it's got hit with heat. But what I do is you use a brand new razor blade and you just put it on there firmly and you just roll it, and it'll cut this brass tubing, and you don't have to worry about bending it and all that kind of stuff. So I usually find that cutting about midway, again, we can do this little stack up thing and estimate. I like to have about 3/8, ½ inch or so sticking out. And then this part's going to get angled down a little bit. This will be my fuel draw line. So I'm going to, just right here where I put my thumb, I'm just going to lay this on the table here. And with firm pressure, I'm just going to roll this. And there you go. It just cut that fuel tubing. A nice, clean cut. Very clean cut. So there's that one cut. Now for the vent line, probably the same thing. Here, the vent line, or the return line, I may end up actually just using most of this, because the return line, I still want it to come out, and then it's going to need to come down quite a ways, so I may end up just using this full length. I don't like doing that because I'll cut some of this off, because I always use these spare pieces of brass, the brass tubing that I don't use on the tank. I always just throw those in with my bag of tubing and stuff, because you never know when you need a coupler. So I think for this one I'm just going to guess and just say I want it to be about that long. And again, I'm just going to do this rolling technique to cut this tubing. And another perfect cut. No edges, no sharp edges. So, which one of these was the longer one? I hope I didn't screw that up. I don't think I did. So now this is our vent line. That was a little bit shorter than it probably could have been, but oh well. Now our return line. Yeah, I don't like how short that one was. And then I just kind of put the front piece in here. Could have put them through the plastic first, but sometimes I like to do things the more challenging way. There we go. Yeah, so that vent, a little bit shorter than I really wanted, but that'll be all right. So now we'll just start to throw our screw in there. Put the back plate on. Now is when I need to get the right bit. I've noticed I just put another Dubro tank together, I believe, and I think it must have been an older one because it actually had a slotted, I believe it had a slotted screw. I never like to see slotted screws. I know the Sullivan one had a pointed or slotted. And it's better, so much better when you got these cross point screws so you're not slipping. Now I'm not torquing this down, I'm just kind of holding it in place, because what's going to happen is when you put this in and screw it all down, then it's going to cause this rubber to expand a little bit, and that's what creates the seal. So here what I'm going to do is, this is my return line. I'm just going to bend that down like that, and it's just returning fuel to the tank if there's any overflow. So it's not like it has to go all the way to the bottom, it just has to go into the tank. So now I'm installing my fuel clunk line, and now I'm just going to put a bend in it also, so that it's kind of aiming downward. And again, this tank is not going in flight, so it's always going to be on a stand. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to guide these things in here and push this in the tank. I don't think I started squeezing that at all. And there, it's in there. So now I hold it up to the light sideways so I can see exactly where the clunk is hitting, and my clunk is hitting right about back here, so that's good. So I've got it in here. Now we just tighten this thing up. Now what I'll do is I'll get another spare piece of fuel tubing and I'll put it on here, and I'll just kind of pressure check it. And what I do is when I pressure test it, I just blow through it and hold these lines closed. If I can blow in there and hold air and blow pretty much as hard as I can and not have any air escape, then I'm confident that the leak test passes. So that's pretty much the assembly process for a fuel tank. Now I have the engine out here. I brought this fuel tubing and a fuel filter. These are things I'm probably not going to mess with right now, just because of the fact that I don't have this on the stand, and I want to make sure that I cut the lines to the proper length and don't waste any tubing, even though I do have a little coupler here that I could use to splice tubing, and another little piece of fresh tubing. But anyway, so that is our short video on how I assemble a Dubro tank, especially for this particular one because it's a special setup. It has 3 lines, and I think I've done 3 tank setup maybe all of once or twice in over 30 years. So that was kind of a new thing for me too. So there you go.